If the Bible's got you tied in knots, if you're burdened with religious thoughts, come grab a drink and join the choir. It's Heretic Happy Hour.
Well, hello there. What are you doing here? Oh, me? Well, I'm just one of the co-hosts of the Heretic Happy Hour. Why don't you come on in and pull up a chair and pour yourself a drink? You know, we're going to be talking about something I think you're going to find very fascinating. It's a conspiracy theory series, and this episode especially, we're going to get into some things that I think might shock and surprise you. But let's wait. We'll get to that in just a moment. My name is Keith Giles, and I am one of the 4 co-hosts of the very crowded Heretic Happy Hour podcast. I'm the author of several books, including one that just came out, Jesus, Unexpected, Ending the End Times to Become the Second Coming, with a foreword by Baxter Kruger. Go grab it at Amazon, and it'll change your life. I promise. It'll change your life. You'll never be the same. And I'm joined by my co-hosts, Katie, Derek, and Matt. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Valentine. I'm the author of Sex, Slavery, and Self-Control, and I endorse Keith's book. And it sounds like a conspiracy theory to me, Keith, that you're trying to get everyone to understand the second coming in a new way. And so maybe we can work that in. I am also really excited to talk about all these conspiracy theories. It's satisfying like a very 15-year-old part of me from my adolescence. So I can't wait.
Hi, kids. Do you like violence? My name is Derek Day. My name is, and I'm the author of Deconstructing Religion, Sicka, and Asshole for Hire.
That's why we brought you in, the professional asshole for hire. One wasn't enough. And I'm Matt DiStefano. I want to tell everyone real quick about I have a new podcast called Apostates Anonymous, and that doesn't.
No.
That does not mean I'm leaving the Heretic Happy Hour. I'm just. Oh, shut up. I'm just stretching myself thin. So I would encourage everyone.
Me and Katie are.
Yeah, you guys have a podcast.
Exactly.
Everybody's got.
Everyone has a spinoff, so why not me? So go check that out. Excited for another episode in our conspiracy theory series. And I will say this. Katie, you put out a poll in our Facebook group.
This has made me so happy all day long.
Yes,
and
it really did.
And it was, who do you think, before listening to the last episode, who do you think is going to believe in Sasquatch the most? And overwhelmingly, it was me.
All the way.
All the way. I don't like you. No one knows me at all. Have you not? I feel like I am not known by any of our listeners.
Yeah, I voted for you, by the way.
I'm sure you did. And you were the only one. I don't want to give a spoiler alert, but you're the only one who actually believes in the Sasquatch. And I was like, no, I don't think so.
That's great.
Yeah, I have my chart ready, so I'm recording all of our votes. So listeners, this is a good opportunity to see how well you know us and predict what we're going to say.
Hey, just for the record, I voted like a Russian bot.
Oh my!
Oh my gosh!
All right.
Well, anyway, Derek, do you want to tell our listeners about this hotline that we have?
Yeah, let's go on and talk about the hotline. Listen, if you have questions or comments, or you want to give us a compliment, or you want to cuss us out, you can do that by calling 240-343-7379. Once again, it's 240-343-7379. And we have a voicemail. Roll that beautiful heretic footage.
Hi, all. Thanks for doing the podcast. I love it. I'm Patrick. I'm from Michigan. Go Spartans. Out there to Jamal. I know he's no longer helping host the show. But hey, anyways, anti-Buckeye fan here. Anyways, I just wanted to say I just realized in the moment that I am driving through Ohio right now and that I feel alive and didn't realize that I wasn't feeling alive. But after I started listening to the Heretic Happy Hour and listening to everybody's thoughts and opinions and anti-religious information, that I just had an epiphany. I'm starting to feel alive again inside and didn't realize that I wasn't feeling that way. So thanks, guys, gals, and appreciate you. Keep going. Love you guys.
The healing power of the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
You heard it here first.
We are bringing people back to life. And there's evidence.
Resurrection, baby.
Resurrection.
That was so nice.
Woo!
That was so nice to hear.
Yes, that was wonderful.
I know. God, that gave me life today.
That was good.
That resurrected me.
That's like the perfect antidote to like the conspiracy anxiety that I feel as I research conspiracy theories. Thank you so much for calling in with that.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very sweet. And I'm disappointed that Jamal wasn't here to personally receive your rebuke or your cheering for the Spartans. We'll pass it along.
All right. I feel like we are ready to introduce our amazing, fabulous, wonderful heretic of the week. Should we do it?
It's the Heretic of the Week.
Hi, I'm Sara Moslener, and I'm the Heretic of the Week.
Hi, Sara, welcome to this episode. We're really excited to have you as the Heretic of the Week, despite our unenthusiastic welcome to you. And tell us a little bit, why in the world would people consider you a heretic?
What a fun question to think about. And thank you so much, Katie, for having me. At this point in time, I kind of welcome the title of heretic. I think there was a time in my life when I would have felt some shame around it, but now it's a badge I wear proudly. And I think, and people could think of me a heretic for lots of different reasons. When I first went to seminary, which is where we met, Katie, I was told, be careful what you learn there, because it might really mess things up for you, which is something that a lot of people get told. And so I think because I'm someone who studies religion as an academic, some people see that as a threat to genuine faith, which was very strange for me to encounter because that didn't make any sense to me. So I'm realizing I have at least a 3 to 5 pronged answer to this question because there are many reasons I could be thought of as a heretic, right?
So you're not afraid of books?
I'm not afraid of
Is
books.
one reason.
You heretic.
Exactly. I'm not afraid of books.
What about books that are not the Bible?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the Bible can be read like other books, that it is not, while people treat it as special, it is not necessarily, we don't necessarily learn the most about it by treating it as a special document. So that's another good one. I know from things, the mean people on the internet would call me a heretic, and they have. Because someone actually said this when they read my book, or at least read about it. I believe the exact quote was, I do not see the indwelling of the Holy Spirit within her.
Wow.
And so that was actually pretty.
How do you see that? It's kind of hard to see that, isn't it?
Right. Yes, exactly. Right. Spirits are invisible.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah. But it was, and so this was right when my book came out, and there were some responses to it, because I was talking about religion and sexuality together. And I think that's what really makes me a capital H heretic, because in the United States, in our culture, we are just so uncomfortable with religion and sexuality being in the same space, being in the same body. And so, which is why whenever we talk about, whenever there are cases about same-sex marriage, it's always the straight people that are claiming religious freedom, because it wouldn't even occur to them that LGBTQ people might also be religious and have the right to their, religious beliefs being protected. And so we have such a strict bifurcation. And the work I do looking at how these two things interplay just completely destroys that. And most recently, I was I got some attention from some far right folks, and they had some things to say, and especially when they found out that I studied religion and sexuality, that was all they needed to know that I was not someone that was trustworthy or could be taken seriously. And of course, I wear that with a badge of honor.
So have you been accused of pushing people down the slippery slope into like pornography?
No. And it's interesting. I have, though. I was, and this is interesting because if you're a woman and you're writing about religion and sex and people are paying attention to you, the internet will tell you exactly how unfuckable you are. So that happened to me.
Wow.
Yes.
The bell, ring the bell, ring the bell.
It's a roundabout way to a dating app.
Yeah.
Write a book about sex and religion.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, what I was told was, and these were by some responses from the New Republic, folks at the New Republic. Someone said, I looked her up, and let me tell you, she couldn't get laid at a drunken sailors convention.
Ugh.
She's obsessed with sexual purity because her students are getting more than she is.
Oh my gosh.
So did you
Yeah.
respond
No,
at all?
no,
Okay.
no.
Because I can think of some really choice responses
yeah.
that would have been
Yeah.
fun to have written down.
I mean,
Hey,
it's
opposing your dominatrix outfit, that
Yeah,
would do
right.
it.
That's right. Like, come here, sweetie. No, I don't engage with that. But unfortunately, it was small enough that it was more amusing, and of course, they're amazing anecdotes. That it was good to just have those kind of things because they do make pretty good stories. And I try and tell myself like this does show that I'm pushing some buttons. And whether that's because I'm a woman who has some professional status as an academic, or because I'm daring to talk about religion and sex together, or because I'm critiquing purity culture, which is something that a lot of people on the right still feel very strongly about. And it's all part of a whole, political conglomeration. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely touched a nerve.
So here's a great question. When did you turn the corner from orthodoxy to heresy? When did you take the plunge?
All right. So I will tell you what I now believe. At the time, I wouldn't have said this, but now I believe this was when the edges of the door started to emerge. And even though it would be a few years yet until I would walk through it. So when I was a very enthusiastic evangelical teenager, I also felt that God was calling me to be an actor, and I would be someone who would use my gifts to spread God's word. And so I got involved in a local Christian theater company that many of my friends were a part of. It was, I come from, rural Pennsylvania, so it was a community theater in a barn. But it was a Christian theater company called Sunrise, SONRISE.
I could have guessed.
Theater.
I could have guessed, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of vacation Bible
That's what it's-
school curriculum.
yes, that's what it sounds like.
Yep. So we did all the bad Christian musical theater you can imagine. And to this day, I can't deal with any form of musical theater because of it. So,
wow. Not even Wicked or Hamilton.
I know. And it's true. It's yes. There are some exceptions, but yeah, it just. So what happened was we had been in one show called Let's Go to the Rock. But this is my sister and I. But then the next show we were in was called High Tops. I don't know if you have ever heard of it, but it was a show I had seen, and I was in love with it. It was powerful. It brought people to Jesus. I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Um, and what I didn't realize was the degree to which my parents were concerned about the time expectation and sort of the theater's expectation of our time. I mean, I was in high school, and my parents were like, "We're not going to drive you an hour, and back to this thing," and they weren't necessarily, and so they were raising some questions about the time commitment that was being demanded of us, and so my sister and I were actually double cast. And I didn't understand why, because these were all conversations that were happening behind my back. And so I kind of, I think, bore that well, and was like, okay, that's fine, And, but then I came home from rehearsal one night, and my mom tells us that my sister and I have been kicked out of the play. And I was just like, what is going on? And I guess my parents had been in conversation with the people at the theater, the director, and saying like, it's really important to us that our family time is protected, and the demands you're making are excessive, and da 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 da. And so the director, I guess, was having a lot of problems with my parents, which I did not know about. Well, in the midst of this, when I go to school the next day, and all my friends are there, I went to a Christian school, K through 12. So sort of like an extended family reunion, because these are people you've known since. I mean, I have one of my friends from school was someone like, we met like when our mothers gave birth to us, so this was a very family like environment, for good or ill. And so I went to school, and a friend of mine said, hey, let me fill you in on what happened. So he told me these things that I still are just wow. So what he told me was that one night, the director, Tim, had a dream, and he dreamt that the barn where the theater was burning. And so he shared this dream with a person who was his spiritual director. And at the time, being evangelical, I didn't know what a spiritual director was. Now, of course, I know. I've even had spiritual directors, but at the time, it felt like a little like woo-woo. So I was like, okay, what's that? And so he shared his dream with the spiritual director, and the spiritual director said, well, this is, the Holy Spirit's way of telling you that if you do not follow the will of the Spirit, everything will be taken from you. And so he interpreted that then to mean that my sister and I had to be kicked out of this play. And so we were. He believed that my parents were impeding the work of the Holy Spirit. Now, mind you, my parents, my dad has been a minister my whole life. Some of, very, very devout. They both eventually converted to the Eastern Orthodox Church, and now my dad is a priest in that church. So yes, so that was an interesting kind of accusation. Wow. Then I also hear stories about this same person who's the spiritual director. Other friends are telling me like, oh, I heard that like she was walking in a trance backwards around the barn, and
like Linda Blair.
Yeah, right. Like it was just like, and I was like, what? Like it just kept getting wilder and wilder. And here I was, like 16-year-old, like with the heart for Jesus, thinking she's got some acting chops, and everything has just been toppled. Now, it turns out I don't have acting chops, so I don't feel bad about that part. But I actually went on and studied theater in college and worked in theater for a while. But that was really the moment when I saw how manipulative evangelical Christianity could be. Like, what she did is not what spiritual directors do if she did interpret this dream. Or maybe it was just all the ego of the director. So, and I
Well,
did,
it's very
yeah.
gendered too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very gendered to accuse the woman and not a woman, but a teenager, yeah, being in this trance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, and so she was, well, it was the spiritual director who was an adult that people told me she was the one supposedly walking around the barn in a trance, and had some kind of like, was perceived to have some kind of power over, like, spiritual power that people felt weird about, but I didn't know. But other people said, yeah, you know what, she goes to my church, she's actually pretty legit.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to think about her, and I never met her. But I knew the director very well, and I just, yeah, it was. And the thing is, like, all of my friends were in this play, so socially it was awful. And my parents ended up kind of being ostracized as well, because there were other parents that were getting angry at them. And so it was pretty devastating for me in that. And of course, I had um, a very happy, very safe, very protected childhood. And so this was one of the most formative experiences in my young life, um, which I realize indicates that was in fact very protected. And of
Yeah,
course,
and so in the middle of this, you're sounds like you were really entrenched in this evangelical culture within school, family, everything.
Mhm.
And then your work now is around, purity culture.
Yeah.
And, Virgin Nation is the name of your book.
Mhm.
And so were you also entrenched in that purity culture? Like, how has that informed
Yeah.
what you do now?
So it's interesting because in the same way that I felt like this calling to, like, be a mouthpiece for Jesus. There you go. You could go to town with that one. Through my theater, I also would love to challenge myself to do bold things. And so I'm 45, so I'm not in what I call the purity generation. Those are people who kind of were teenagers in the early 2000s. So I'm a little older than that. But I was very much informed by it. I remember watching Josh McDowell's Why Wait series in Sunday school. And I knew there was someone in my school that had, like, the Why Wait t-shirt. And this was before True Love Waits and Silver Ring Thing, which are the groups I studied. And I don't remember doing this. Like, I don't remember actually physically sitting down and doing this, but I know because there's evidence when and I must have been a senior in high school. So this would have been the same year that I got kicked out of this theater group. I penned a letter in response to a newspaper article in my local paper that was talking about comprehensive sex education and why it was important and necessary, and how teaching abstinence was just not practical. And I took umbrage because that kind of statement made me feel invisible, and because in my world that was just the norm. Of course you don't have sex before marriage. And so I wrote a letter to the editor saying just that. And I was full of, my 17-year-old righteous evangelical indignation. Um, Even though, like, I had no comprehension of all the different, I only remember feeling completely invisible. Like, these people don't even understand that there are those of us this is just, what we know to be true and right. But of course, this was before the rings, this was before the pledges and all of that stuff. But it was just an assumed, part of my Christian identity.
Yeah, it was definitely an assumed part of mine too. And I had the card. I mean, I did have the card, and we're of a similar age, and so maybe it was regional.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was regional, but it was such a presumed, it was such a presumed thing, and I just there's so much unpacking to do around purity culture,
Yeah,
around assumptions, especially around women's sexuality and gendered identity, and
absolutely.
yeah, it's so damaging, and uh, I know that so many listeners are going to I anticipate that so many listeners are going to
Yeah.
identify with that
Yeah.
because the message that so many of us receive is sex is bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad until you get married and then it's great. And the
Right.
reality, doesn't always match that
Right.
ideal.
Right. Yeah. What has become clear? So when I started researching the purity movement, it was 2006. And there was no one who was publicly critiquing the movement. Um, and within the last decade, there has been a groundswell of critique. And at first, it started out as people sort of making feminist criticisms and saying, sexual double standard, those kinds of things. And now, people are making connections between purity culture and, hashtag church too, and the problems of sexual assault and covering up sexual assault. And so to um, watch that development over the last decade, and especially in the last 5 years, because and my book came out in 2015, has been really remarkable to see. Okay, first of all, it's pretty clear that this purity stuff was really not first and foremost about caring for adolescents, because they're grown up now and they are hopping mad about messed up relationships, about being even more um, open to staying in abusive relationships and all sorts of stuff. So it's been so it's been interesting to watch that. But yeah, absolutely. And my hope is to sort of bring together people who are needing to have those conversations and just tell their stories. That's been happening a lot in different places online, where people are just saying, like, look, this is what happened to me. This is what I learned. This is how it really messed me up. I just, I think about for myself how, I no longer consider myself a Christian, but but the dealing with sort of the sexual anxiety of the purity culture, like that hangs on even longer, even after you've said to yourself, I no longer believe this. It's really hard to realize, like, it's okay for me to wear these clothes. It's okay for me to have these conversations and meet these people and do these things. Like, I'm a grown ass woman. um, but it's such a powerful message that's especially tied into women's sense of self. And of course, that's, and it just did such a good job of doubling down on all the sort of misogynist crap that we're fed. Um, and especially about, like, boys are sexually voracious. This is their natural. They are naturally inclined to be sexually aggressive and take initiative. And girls, young women, are sexually passive. They are more inclined to protect themselves. And and that, to me, like, that's basically a naturalization of rape when you say that. Because then, uh, for, and some people are arguing now that this is why we don't hold men as accountable, because we're like, well, that's just their you know, that's just their inclination, and they can be forgiven for that discretion. But women, it's against their natural inclination, any kind of supposed sexual impropriety, and therefore, like, there is no path to forgiveness for them, within the evangelical Christian sexual ethic.
Yeah, for us
So
guys,
even
it's just sowing
desire.
the wild oats.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and even desire then is
Yeah.
demonized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Appetites. Yep. And there's a lot of interesting stuff about sort of the need to control women's appetites, whether that's sex or food. Um, and of course
Wow.
the ideal female body is white, is thin, is sexually attractive, but not necessarily sexually available. Um, and especially when you look back at, I think one of the most fascinating parts of the height of the purity culture is all the pop stars that were wearing the purity rings. And so I've written about Britney Spears and sort of, and also Jessica Simpson. Like, they both came
Oh,
out
yeah.
of SBC culture. But then beyond that, you have the Jonas Brothers. And one thing, so there's an article in Jezebel about this, which was so fun to be a part of, because basically they were looking at how, and I apologize, I'm totally forgetting the name of the journalist. I apologize to you. It's an amazing article. And basically looking at how what all of these young artists had in common is that they all had contracts with Disney.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Ooh.
yeah, and they were all wearing purity rings and talking about their purity rings.
Interesting.
And so, and there was in 2000, Disney was very intentional at shifting, because right before then had been the SBC threatened a boycott of Disney and ABC because of the Ellen show.
Mm.
And so they had the argument is that Disney had to get back in the good graces of the SBC.
Sarah, Harry Potter world has already been taken away from me because of JK
I know.
Rowling's crazy anti-trans stance, and now you're taking Disneyland from me.
I know.
No big loss.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I try to be sensitive. Yeah. I mean, right. Yeah. The Harry Potter stuff is really difficult. But you also have people like Daniel Radcliffe who are, who are doing the right thing. So I don't think all is lost. But yeah, I mean, well, and I think the illusion of Disney, the illusion of happiness, right, tracks so nicely with the illusion of romance. And I think they're very similar happiness projects, but they're happiness projects that require you to accept a particular understanding of reality and truth. And if you're not willing to, then you're not going to enjoy the benefits of that life. But yeah, so it's interesting. I haven't watched it yet, but I understand that the Jonas Brothers talk about their purity rings in their most recent documentary that they have, and somehow I know that Kevin was the first Jonas brother to take off his purity ring. And I did not know that, but I also did know that there was a Jonas brother named Kevin. So, but yes, so that's some interesting stuff there. I mean, this is all, such a fabrication of what is good and pure and will make us happy for other purposes. And what I argue in my book is that the overall purpose was really about evangelical political power. That if evangelicals could make the argument that their moral code was necessary for national well-being, like, they have solidified their political imports. And now what we're seeing, and what scholars in my field are talking about more and more, is Christian nationalism, and that's is where we're at. Like, we're looking at people who identify as evangelical as, having this kind of white Christian nationalist view of the world. And I think that evangelical purity culture was an effort to create that world and to use the bodies of evangelical teenagers to embody that. And Richard Ross, who started True Love Waits, he said that the world is seeing, or the nation is going to see a transformation that's going to be led, or a revival, a spiritual revival led by, sexually pure teenagers.
Yeah, even when you say like pure, I shudder. I just shudder a little bit around that.
Yeah.
And I think the promises that this culture is asking teens to make, and I think the one that the camp that I was at was that you wouldn't, it's funny to even say it this way now, but you wouldn't have sex below the neck before you got married.
Wait, huh? What is sex above the neck?
Yeah.
Man, that sounds
pretty interesting.
Hey, Keith, it's called giving
That's
head.
what I thought it was. Yeah, that's where I was going.
But part of that is below the neck.
No, that's for women. Men, it's a different standard.
Oh, of course, that's right. That's
no
right.
neck job for you, Keith.
I'm just imagining. Well, and I think it was South Park where the kids started having ear sex.
That's Family Guy.
Yeah,
Family Guy.
Oh, was it? I think it was also okay, but yes, and that's So there's all sorts of those kind of stories.
Sarah, you mentioned your book. It's Virgin Nation, correct?
Yes.
So where can people pick that up, and where can people follow your work and find out what you're working on these days?
Yeah. So and this is a personal thing, I don't judge people, but I am trying hard not to use Amazon anymore. But you can find my book. You can order it. There's an indie book website, which I just have started using. But yes, so you can find it. You can order it through just about any place you would buy your books, preferably an independent bookstore. And my current project is called After Purity. Stories of recovery and resistance among current and former evangelicals. And this is a project I've just started. It's sort of what's taking up all my time right now. But I have a website for anyone who's interested called afterpurityproject.com. And it lays out, so anyone who has a story about their experience in purity culture, or would like to talk to other people who've come out of it. I'm setting up groups for people who want to be in groups. For people who just want to do their own thing, they can submit journals. And so all of this is explained on the project website, afterpurityproject.com. So if listeners are interested in checking that out, everything you need to know is right there.
All right. Perfect. So encourage the listeners to go to that site and check that out. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank you for helping us be all impure. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
That's what we do.
Wow, Sarah, thank you so much. That was great. Great conversation, man. That was I really like what she was talking about there. And where do we find these amazing people? Like, we always come up with some amazing guests on the show.
We found her because I went to school with her.
Oh, that's right.
That's how we found her.
That's right. I'm glad you went to school.
Sarah's great. It's so wonderful to hear about someone who's really tackling purity culture in this dynamic way, healthy way. I hope lots of listeners who have experienced that can touch base with her, find out more about her work.
Yeah, Sarah's going to help some people escape.
Totally.
We're helping people escape. We're giving them life and resurrection and healing properties.
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
It's a stretch though to tie it in with the episode topic today, but we're gonna have to make a hard left here.
Yes.
And we're gonna have to get into Keith. I think this is the one you've been waiting for since pretty much the advent of this entire show.
Keith, are you wearing a Star Trek outfit right now?
No, I'm not wearing anything. What are you talking about? I always record in the nude.
Old man Giles.
God bless you, Barrett.
My eyes, they burn. They burn.
Yeah, good thing this is on the internet, right? So we're all remote. We don't have to be in the same room together.
Well, good thing it's not a video podcast.
Yes. Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah, but is the mental imagery, Keith?
But maybe it would improve our ratings. Maybe we get more downloads. Well,
Maybe.
You never know.
We can try it out.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to dive into this thing because this is off.
We have to.
We got to jump.
This is the one. This is the one. It's aliens, man. It's aliens.
Yeah. Lou, we're going to talk about. Okay, and then in some way, I think we're also, as we're talking about, let's say like the moon landing conspiracy or UFOs or aliens.
Yeah, all things space.
Yes,
all things space.
We're going to also at the same time try to sort of make connections between these topics and sort of like deconstruction and spirituality. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll see if we pull it off.
Well, I think in a totally serious note, I think no matter what we believe about aliens, or if we found out that there were other sentient beings on other planets, it certainly would impact a lot of people's view of Jesus, God, spirituality, the whole thing.
Right.
And I think it would blow apart a lot of, especially fundamentalist, conservative evangelicals, if it turns out that there's aliens.
So I've never understood that. Why? I mean, people say that all the time, but I personally don't really understand why would it do that? Because are you saying that people that like a lot of fundamental Christians honestly believe that we are the only intelligent life in the entire galaxy?
That is precisely what they believe.
Yeah, and it's also it's a human centric perspective. Right. So I was reflecting on this a little bit in the last episode with Sasquatch and Harp, but that the idea that we are the very center of all of creation. And I don't want to say that I don't think humans are important. I think we're incredibly important and incredibly beloved. But if aliens are a fact, that also we have to reconcile what is the cross, what is salvation. It brings a lot of things into question. Did Jesus go to other planets, a form of Jesus? And it means humans aren't the center of the universe. It's very unsettling.
Well, it would not.
Listen, the Bible is chock full of alien stuff. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I read Eric von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods. It blew my mind. I was in the 6th grade when I read that. And, Ezekiel's wheel in a wheel, Jacob's ladder. And then you get Jesus post-resurrection. He comes into a locked room.
And he ascends.
Can anybody say transporter, boys and girls?
And he ascends into heaven. Yeah, he flies up into the sky.
Yeah.
I mean, so...
After he rode on a dinosaur.
Right, of course, right after that. So, I mean, okay, so I guess I do understand the implications of it, but it's to me, it's just more like, well, we would have questions. I mean, if aliens did sort of reveal themselves, land on the White House lawn or whatever, and just reveal themselves without a doubt, they are real. They've been visiting our planet. And okay, so I can see that would create questions. We would say, well, now we got to ask them: was there any sort of a Jesus type figure in their in their culture? What do they believe about God? What do they believe about spirituality? I mean, honestly, I would love to have that conversation with an alien life form. I would, once we figured out language and we could communicate, I would absolutely love to know what their theologies were and what they believed about spirituality and stuff like that. I think it'd be great, but I wouldn't be threatened by it. That's what's weird.
Well, you wouldn't be, but you're not a fundamentalist.
I'm a heretic. I keep forgetting that.
And I mean, I honestly think that if they were human in their development, in their evolution, I'm guessing just given the propensity towards scapegoating and violence, that there would be Jesus figures in all the planets, and they would have a story similar. His name might be Ron or something, but Ron Christ.
Ron Christ. Oh, I love it.
As long as it isn't Elron Christ.
That's where I got it. That's yeah. But I bet there'd be a similar story where, you know, we're so predictable. Now that's assuming that any alien evolved in the same way we did. That would obviously be speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I think the aliens would tell us?
Interstellar messianism.
The aliens would tell us we never need salvation.
Yeah, maybe if they're more advanced.
That we were fine from the beginning.
If they were advanced, yeah, maybe. See, that's what would be fascinating. What if they took a completely different path, right? Because you gotta imagine there's no Augustine on their planet, right? There's no Calvin. Thank God. I want to go to this other planet.
What if there's someone worse?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have. Yeah, another guy, Chuck. He's worse.
Calvinus Maximus.
Maybe they have a female-centered theology, and everything will be and everything will be equal, and there won't be all these weird hierarchies. And they're coming to share that good news with us.
I want to go to this planet.
Down with it.
We would just kill them.
And then we killed them.
No, they're obviously superior technology. No, you won't. You're good.
All right. So do we want to take one of these at a time and just kind of dive into it a little bit and then weigh in on where we think we land on these? So let's start with the moon landing. I think that's just a fascinating one. I think that may be sort of the mother of all conspiracies, probably the very first major conspiracy. I think maybe JFK. JFK's assassination came first, didn't it?
First. Yeah, I don't know when the conspiracy thought started with JFK.
But okay, well, we'll get to that later. So the moon landing. Let's just say the moon landing.
So what's the story is that we landed on the moon. Americans won the space race, went to the moon. What's the conspiracy?
With the help of Nazis.
So one of the major theories I've heard is that we essentially faked it because the whole point of the space race was we were in competition with the Soviet Union, and essentially we wanted to bankrupt them. And by the way, that worked. It really did bankrupt the Soviet Union. And here's the other thing about it. The Soviet Union was kicking our butt at every stage of the space race until right at the end, when all of a sudden we leapfrog ahead and drop 3 guys on the moon and do a moon landing. But they were the first ones in orbit, first ones to orbit the Earth, humans to orbit the Earth, animals to orbit the Earth. I mean, they did so many things way before we did. They were kicking our butt. And then, like I said, all of a sudden, boom, we jump ahead and now we land on the moon before they do, multiple times. So the conspiracy is that we faked it because we knew we couldn't actually do it. They were beating us. And the additional sort of detail that I've heard, I don't know if this is whatever, this is just another part I've heard, that Stanley Kubrick, the film director, because he had directed 2001: A Space Odyssey a few years before this, was brought in to fake the footage of the moon landing to make it appear as real as possible.
2001: Space Odyssey is older than the moon landing?
I believe so.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Good movie.
But you had to drag Stanley Kubrick in.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just the messenger.
He's like David Lynch of the 60s.
Yeah.
I can see why. I can see why he gets dragged into conspiracy theory completely. So some of the details that I've seen people bring up around why they believe that the landing was faked was the main one was the flag flies, and people rightly point out there's not really atmosphere on the moon, so a flag wouldn't fly. There'd be no wind. And then there's some answers to that NASA has given out, but that was one. There's like a reflection that looks like a halo light in someone's mask. Mm-hmm. People comment that there's no crater where the capsule landed. And then, the background, that no matter how far or close the astronauts get from the mountains in the background, they always look like they're in the same space. So NASA's answered all of these, but I'm kind of curious.
Can I say there's a couple more? Can I say there's a couple more?
Yeah.
So a few other parts, sort of quote unquote evidence, or at least things that are curious, are there are faked photographs, and this has been proven. You can, if you Google it, if you don't already know about it. There's one of the missions, I think one of the first missions where they did a moonwalk, not a moonwalk, but a spacewalk, where the astronaut left the capsule and walked around in space and came back. The photograph that NASA released of him doing the spacewalk is exactly the same photograph of the same exact guy in his training, which was underwater. And if you compare that photograph of him underwater and you flip it, you seriously just flip it, it's the same exact photograph. So that's one thing. There's some photographic official photographs from NASA that have some problems with them. So that's one. And then the other one is, and I was talking about this before we hit record, there's no noticeable or any delay really between mission control in Houston and astronauts on the freaking moon using 1960s radio technology. And the reason why that's significant is if you just watch a normal news broadcast and you have the anchor man is in like ABC News, the anchor man is in let's say New York City, and he's talking to a correspondent in Florida. We have digital technology, we have microwave technology, we've got cell phone technology, and they're talking live to this person a few 100 miles away, and they go, "Hi, Bob," and then there's like a 10-second delay before the person responds. And yet, when you go back and listen to the moon landing footage of the very first landing, there's no lag, there's no delay between mission control and the astronauts responding. That is weird. I mean, if someone can prove me wrong on that, I want to hear it because I
wonder if it was actually delayed when it was live, and that for the sake of ease of listening,
yes,
that they edited.
That could be. And if so, though, I want someone to tell me that. Just please show me that that's what they did, or you know what I mean. I would love to know that and hear that, and then I could put that one to rest. That would be great.
But there's I was just looking at some photos. There are photos of equipment that was left on the moon, including the lunar rover, the little car that they drove around, the descent stage from the lunar lander. There's all kinds of stuff there, and there are even tracks from the lunar rover still on the moon, obviously because there's no wind. So this is my opinion, that in order for them to have faked this and for everyone to have been completely down with it, it would just take, I read somewhere that it would take over 460,000 people sworn to secrecy to make it work as a conspiracy.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. That was going to be my question, is how many people would it take? And you just answered it, 460,000 people, and I'm like, damn, that's a lot of people to be quiet. With regards to the fake photos, my personal opinion, not that you asked, but
well,
you didn't even Sasquatch, so
we're asking. We want this. What this is all about.
I'm kidding. My personal opinion is that they probably did fake photos just in case they didn't get there, because it was like a puffing out your chest, who's going to win this race.
Exactly.
And there's no damn way we're going to lose. So we got to cover our ass and, make sure we got some fake photos to show that we made it there. I do, however, think we did make it there, even though there are some fake photos.
And you know what's the main reason why I think that we went there? Buzz Aldrin. Because there was some, dipshit reporter that got in Buzz's grill and said, "Hey, tell us about the fake moon landing." And Buzz got really, Buzz punched this dude.
Yep. Yeah,
this was like, 60-something-year-old Buzz Aldrin at the time, and he just totally floored this dude.
Well, it's because the guy was going to blow his cover, and he, then he would be in trouble. So that's why he had to.
You know what? I think that if people were worried about their cover being blown, I think the reaction would be a little bit different. I mean, Buzz was reacting like a guy that really had accomplished something, and this guy was attacking it.
So people who believe that the moon landing is a conspiracy, what's the motivation around that? This is what I'm kind of curious to explore. Some of it is people who don't want to sort of buy into American exceptionalism and kind of want to critique government, maybe propaganda around exceptionalism, especially in the 60s when the moon landing, I also believe, happened. But what's the benefit in that and buying into the conspiracy theory or propagating the conspiracy theory? To me, it's
everybody
also
likes to.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I say everybody likes to believe that they have some privileged information.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of it's a source of pride. And I'm not gonna. I was gonna say something, but I'm getting into another episode. I don't want to do that. But basically, the whole conspiracy theory mindset feeds into this. I know something you don't.
Right.
Yeah, so that privilege, sort of position of privilege, of knowledge. And there's also something to me where it's like I believe humans are incredibly creative. We're incredibly ingenious. That can be used for a lot of destruction, but it can be used for really cool things like getting us to the flipping moon. And we happen to be recording this episode on a full moon day. And I love, I follow the rhythm of the moon, and I have like new moon and full moon things that I do because I do think the moon, the energy of the moon affects us, my woo-woo metaphysical side. But that seems not coincidental to me that this is the date that we chose. Exactly. But to me, it's also the sort of continuous denial that humans can do really cool things like go to the moon or build really cool buildings or whatever it is it feels like self-defeating as humans. It feels like we're hating ourselves when we don't believe that humans actually have the capability of working together and doing this.
Yeah. Now,
I think, I think that's where a lot of conspiracies go. They kind of like don't have any faith in humanity, that we're just all conspiring to do horrible shit. Instead of, I mean, and we do that, but I just think conspiracies take us down that route where there's like zero faith in humanity.
You know, there's one other thing too that I think fuels the whole conspiracy thing is the involvement of former Nazi scientists in the space program. The whole Operation Paperclip situation lends itself to conspiracy theories, you know, because, you know, why not? I mean, these are Nazis, for Christ's sake. Why would we give anybody any credibility for doing this? The Nazis, they're liars anyway. Okay, well, there you go.
So former Nazis were given like clemency and then hired by NASA.
Yes,
Yep.
That sucks.
It's a whole slew.
Well, yeah.
Basically, the after World War II, the United States and Russia basically split the Russian rocketeers. Neither the United States nor Russia would have advanced their space program at the rate that they did without the Nazi scientists. And that's a fact.
Yeah, Werner.
That's not
Werner von Braun was part of that, and but he was also part of the atomic weapons program as well.
Yep.
So
but nobody believes that nuclear weapons are a conspiracy.
No, I believe in that. I believe in that.
So if you all had the chance to go to the moon, would you?
Hell yeah.
Not really. There's nothing there. What would I do there? It's boring.
Leave your tracks.
I'm kind of afraid of heights, so I don't know if I would.
Well, I'm scared of heights too. I wonder if I could take enough medication to get over that for the ride and then make it there.
I got some good shit for you.
Did you guys watch any of the footage from the SpaceX launch of the two astronauts?
Yeah.
To the space station.
Yeah, I saw that.
And this was really, really cool because the captain of that flight, he not only commanded this flight, but he also commanded the very last shuttle mission. So this guy had a frame of reference between old tech and new tech. And he said this was it was light years different. So I really believe that not only have we gone to the moon, but I think that when a lot of the scientists that were involved in the Apollo program, when they started dying off, we lost a lot of that knowledge. Well, now we're getting some of it back. And I really think that if you want to make a case for manifest destiny, for fuck's sake, it's going to space. Let's go.
California has already been discovered. I'm putting that in air quotes. So the moon is next.
Yeah. You know, there's an episode of Bonanza too that was so awesome. They're riding from Nevada to California, and Haas says, or the rider of the stagecoach says, "Yeah, we're coming into California." And Haas looks at it. He says, "Don't think that's ever going to amount to much." Sorry. And people probably said the same thing about the moon. But hell yeah, if I could get in a rocket and go anywhere, and And this is the other thing too. Neil deGrasse Tyson said that we think that going to the space station is a big deal. He said to an astrophysicist, that's just a ride around the block. Come on, let's get bold and go
Yeah,
somewhere.
you're just going outside your house and riding your bicycle. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I in thinking about these conspiracy theories, I actually had a dream about like the flag on the moon. So it's gotten into my head, y'all. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to think at the end of this series. I might be a wreck of conspiracy theories.
Where's
We're gonna have to see
what's the scorecard at now? Are we you're
Well, I have you firmly down as no for conspiracy theory. Keith, I believe I heard you say we landed on the moon. I said we landed.
Hold on now.
No. Hold on.
Oh,
I'm open to the possibility that we did fake it.
okay. So
I'm not saying that we did. I'm not saying that we didn't. I'm just saying if I found out that we did, it would not surprise me.
okay, Derek.
We definitely went.
All right.
And
I don't want to go again.
And Katie, what were you?
I think
you said yeah.
Yeah, we landed on it. I was very satisfied by all of NASA's responses. And if there's any branch of the government that I have more faith in than the others, it's NASA.
Yeah.
Except for the Nazis, that's kind of that diminished them.
There you go. That
diminished
kind
them.
of
Yeah, but that was the Department of Defense that had Operation Paperclip.
Yeah.
Not NASA was sort of a new
Yeah,
development.
because all they really did was the rocket technology, because they were working on B-2 rockets and stuff.
All right. That sums that up. Let's
we have solved this.
We've solved that one. Let's shift a little bit of gears here. So far, Keith's in the lead, definitely as our
I'm the conspiracy
theory guy. But let's see.
Thanks, Barrett.
And I have a feeling he's going to put another notch on the conspiracy when we get into aliens.
Are we going there now? Should we just go there?
I think we need to go there now.
Okay, so if you don't know, I don't know how you would not know, but part of the aliens thing is that there was, well, I don't know where you begin. I think in America, of course, it begins with Roswell, that there was supposedly a craft that was shot down or crashed one way or the other, landed in Roswell, New Mexico. There was a headline the day it crashed saying flying saucer crashes, UFO crashes, blah, blah, blah. And but then the next day, the Air Force says, oh, no, just kidding. It was a weather balloon. But of course, the fact that they reported it as a UFO, whether it was or not, of course, and then changed their mind, that sort of absolutely created this idea that, well, wait a minute. Why did they change their mind? Why did they first say it was and then they say it wasn't? And now people are coming forward saying, well, I was there and I saw the craft. I saw bodies. We have a spaceship, on and on. So that's part of how I think it began. But of course, people see things in the sky and have been for hundreds of years. If you really want to go back to other cultures, literally thousands of years, other cultures have seen things in the sky they couldn't explain and even said that aliens visited them or whatever. So it's kind of got a long tail, if you will, I guess. But, and then of course, then you have people that claim that they were abducted by aliens. They have, some stories that, of being, they either see the craft or the alien comes in their house or they get abducted somehow and things are implanted in their bodies and blah, 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 blah. So, so there you go. I mean, I guess that's basically it. I personally would rather split some of these things into separate categories, like the crafts that we're seeing, that people are seeing, that are flying around and doing impossible things. For example, like the Navy releasing this footage, declassifying footage of several encounters recently that defy explanation, that they themselves say, we do not know what these things are. So the craft is one thing. And then there's different questions for me anyway on what we say about the craft. But then there's the fact of aliens, either A, yes, they exist or they don't exist, but B, if they do exist, are they really coming to Earth? And if so, why?
Like I can believe aliens exist without believing in a governmental conspiracy to cover up their existence.
Of course. Sure. Yes, of course.
Right.
Yes.
So the conspiracy then is, what is the conspiracy? That the government is hiding facts about aliens or covering up their existence or classifying them? Or I'm sure there's multiple conspiracy theories.
There are many. Yes. And so one of them is this. I'll just float one out that I think is one of many possible theories, right? This is why I say I kind of want to focus in on the craft and the technology, the sort of anti-gravity technology in these craft. I kind of let's just again would say I'm open to the possibility that we actually came up with this technology. That our own scientists discovered how to create 0-point energy anti-gravity technology. Yet we wanted to keep it secret. We did not want this to be something that was available to the general public. And we also saw it as a strategic advantage against national enemies and stuff, foreign powers. And so, as a way of keeping it hidden, I believe an alien thing was invented to, like, oh, you saw something flying in the sky doing something crazy. Oh yeah, you're cuckoo, you're crazy. You're seeing little green men. Don't believe him. So in other words, I feel like it's possible that the technology is our technology. We want to keep it hidden, and one of the ways we keep it hidden is by kind of burying all of those stories in this woo-woo alien, visitors from outer space, little green men thing, to discredit people who legitimately are seeing craft that we don't want anyone to know we actually have. That's one possible theory. Of course, other theories are that they really are aliens. Some other theories are that they are aliens. We have either found the craft or shot them down or something like that. A guy named Bob Lazar, who I think is the most credible person. He's been talking about this since the 80s, I believe. His story has never changed. He has paid a huge price. He's very consistent. Things he said back in the 80s have recently been proven absolutely true. And so I think it's possible. What he says is that he was an engineer in Area 51. He worked on reverse engineering craft that he was told were alien craft. But so maybe they were, maybe they weren't. We'll see.
So are you guys familiar with the Nazi bell?
Nazis again?
I'm digging up those damn Nazis again.
What's up?
It all goes back to the Nazis.
Yeah.
I love it that we can still scapegoat Nazis for.
Well, listen, the Nazis, they were experiencing or they were experimenting with some really advanced shit.
Yeah, they were.
Okay, and this Nazi bell was supposedly something that could either do some hyper speed travel or even time travel. I mean, there's a wide spectrum of speculation on that, but suppose that some of this stuff was just captured Nazi technology that they were trying to figure out. But me myself, I believe that God is vast. And he's way more vast than we even can wrap our little peanut brains around.
Well, speak for yourself.
And so if he's really that vast, or she's really that vast, then surely when she was creating shit, that she created things all over the place. There are probably all kinds of sentient beings scattered throughout the universe. And I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie First Contact, Star Trek. And basically
everyone has, of course.
Matt?
No. I don't watch that shit.
Well, the premise of it is that Efren Cochrane developed this warp drive. And when he flew this ship, it gave off a signature that the Vulcans, who were just kind of observing us from afar, they saw it and they said, okay, these guys have arrived.
Yep.
They've kind of figured it out. And so I'm thinking that all of these sightings began following our nuclear explosion test.
That's true.
And once that happened, that sent up a signal to people or beings that were watching us from afar and said, okay, these guys are on the verge of fucking it up.
Yep.
Time to go in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what I think.
So I have no problem. I definitely believe in aliens. Sounds funny. It sounds like it's a theology. It's not. Do I believe that aliens exist? Yeah. I mean, the universe is a really, really big place. And I can share a story too for our after party for the Patreon crowd as well about some of my experiences around that. But I like
wait. Were you abducted?
No.
Oh, did you see something?
So no, because I'm not. I don't think there's a conspiracy about them. Mm-hmm. If there is, like the aliens who are smart enough to make it all the way to Earth and some kind of hyper faster than light, whatever, they're too smart to get captured.
Of course.
They're not being captured. They're not being captured in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico.
No, I agree.
And I went to the Roswell Museum once when I drove through. Worst museum ever. I'm sorry, Roswell Museum. It's this hokey little museum, and all the like things that you're supposed to read about the artifacts in there, they're all 12 point font. You have to get really close. Only one person can read them at a time. And so Not a lot there. It was fun drive-through though. I encourage everyone to do it if you have the chance.
Yeah.
Well, we have this VTOL technology, vertical takeoff and landing, like Harriers and F-35s, that planes that can take off vertically. And here's the thing: that when these planes are in flight and they're flying in horizontal level flight, they have a certain superiority over other platforms. But they're vulnerable when they go into VTOL mode. When they have to hover or land vertically, that's when they're vulnerable. You can hit them then because they're moving slow. And so when I'm thinking about the whole alien thing in Roswell, whether we were able to shoot anything down or not, I would say that if something were interstellar and it had to somehow transform its power plant to operate in this atmosphere, that maybe that would present a vulnerability. But I'm an engineer.
Was
So
that
that's why
you dropped a lot of fancy words there, Derek.
No matter how good the technology is, I mean, it's likely that nothing's perfect. So there is a chance if they're out there and they have visited us that they could crash or something could happen regarding that. I personally, I don't know. I'm pretty agnostic on the stuff. I do think Lazar is fairly credible. I think a lot of people who have abduction stories, people are like, oh, well, why would someone lie? Well, because people are liars. I mean, a lot of people bullshit, but I don't necessarily think Bob Lazar is. So I think there could be something to this whole thing. But again, it's like, how many people would have to be really silent about it in order to keep it on the down low? And I know not everyone is like people like Lazar, but I don't know. This is one of those tricky ones because I do believe aliens exist, but at the same time, I'm not sure whether we're covering up the technology.
Right. So let me just say something about your question. I think that's a good question to ask, especially in this case. We asked it in the previous situation, how many people would have to cover it up, and I get that for the NASA thing. But when it comes to Lazar with this alien UFO thing, I think Lazar is a great example also of this is what happens to you when you talk, because he did talk in the 80s. And again, he is the most credible person I've ever heard. But they destroyed him. They have made his life a living hell. They tried to erase his degrees from MIT. MIT says they never heard of him, even though he had graduated from there. He has multiple engineering degrees. They slandered him. He went through so much. So, in other words, someone like Lazar stands as a massive example for people that are maybe thinking about talking about the reason why, the motivation for them never to talk, because they can see what will happen to them if they do. And so I think I do get the whole idea of like, well, someone's going to talk. And again, people have talked. There have been people who have come forward. But again, there's a big price to pay for those who do cross that line.
Well, and based on Lazar's own testimonies, their own knowledge about the program was very niche. So he was, focused on one particular thing, and he didn't even, this is from his testimony, didn't know the meta of the whole thing. Like it was very, and so same with all the different engineers in that department didn't know what the other was doing.
So I got a theory in relating this to the religious process, to the deconstruction process, to the reconstruction process. A lot of the stories about aliens, not necessarily about conspiracy, but a lot of the stories about aliens follow a template that I believe we actually find in scripture. And it's an apocalyptic template.
The Bible isn't real.
I know, right? I have a degree that says it is. And so I worked for a long time on a document that's not real then, but whatever.
Take it up with your mom.
Exactly. Metaphysical story for another day. But at any rate, a lot of these stories follow a template where there's an oppressive something, government, force, and it gets externalized as a religious entity, or as a supernatural entity is a better word.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then that supernatural entity is plaguing people. It's abducting people. It's taking them. They're having these otherworldly visions, like an apocalyptic story. And those visions are telling them how they can overcome the oppression. And the visions are telling them that they are, that oppression will be worthwhile. in the long run, and that they'll be able to overcome it. And there's all those fantastical creatures and whatever. So we see that mirrored today in very evangelical culture, where evangelical culture sees themselves as the oppressed one, even though they're in the majority. And part of that is like the government or conspiracy. So then you get the subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup who believes that they are constantly being oppressed. And instead of having Ezekiel's wheels, instead of having like John's vision or Daniel's vision, it becomes aliens. Mm-hmm. And we can even see this in the Scientology mythology that's developed, in the past 40 years. Their story is one of galactic oppression. And like they're the inheritors of this knowledge. And so the more oppressed someone feels, the more fantastical the visions get. And so, for me, I get a lot of questions a lot of the time. And I want to say this with deep respect for the people who are asking me the questions. They're like, well, could such and such in the Bible really be a spaceship that no one knew how to describe? Well, no, I don't think so. Humans are really ingenious. These aren't predicting. People are imagining external forces who are oppressing them. So that is my link between.
What about Ezekiel's wheel and a wheel?
I think the wheel and a wheel, it's a vision. I mean, I'm putting vision in quote, but the people are being oppressed. They perceive themselves at least as being oppressed, of having their land taken away and being in Babylon. And this is literally putting God on wheels. Let's put God on wheels so we can get the hell back to Jerusalem. You do this in the most fantastical way possible.
A wheel in the sky.
Yeah.
It's not a wheel on the ground.
No, because God is up in the sky.
Right.
So God's chariot is riding in the sky back to Jerusalem.
Hey, are you guys familiar with this painting? It's called The Annunciation with Saint Emilius.
Yes.
That one is, you have Mary, she's praying in a room, and it looks like there's this laser beam coming from the sky and landing on her. And the premise is that this is the Holy Spirit impregnating her.
Yeah, that weird?
Like in a laser?
Yeah. Yeah, you should look it up. You should look it up.
It's a Renaissance.
I will look it up. But I'm completely comfortable that we've been ingenious enough and that our imaginations can accommodate these visions without them being aliens. Because the Bible's not literal for me.
Yeah. No, of course not. I think we're all.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're all.
Here's the thing. I think that the Bible explains things at the level that someone in that period would understand it. But if you were to take the same situation and apply it to a 21st century person, you would get a completely different interpretation. And that's why, when I've said this before, and I know I've taken a lot of flack for this, but I believe that theology is the one branch of study that really hasn't advanced since the Dark Ages. And this is one of those reasons, because if you were to look at the wheel and a wheel, or you look at Jacob's ladder, or any number of things, okay, is this really what it says in the book? Or is it something that somebody tried to explain at their level of understanding?
Sure.
And could we possibly get a different understanding if we take a modern interpretation of the same event?
Yeah, I think we definitely. I think we definitely could, but I don't believe that Ezekiel saw a wheel and a wheel. I believe Ezekiel is using an imaginative concept to describe getting the people back home, and that God is leading the way.
Yeah, but then too, Ezekiel was a guy that baked cakes, that were fueled by an oven that he fueled with his own shit. So
necessity is mother of invention there. Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, can I bring us back to aliens real quick? There's just something I wanted to.
Oh my God! Who the hell cares?
It's the whole point of this episode. Okay. So I just heard this theory recently, and I think it's really compelling. So again, this is an assumption. If people are seeing aliens, like there's the gray aliens, right? They're the kind of like they have the big heads and the big black eyes, and they have no genitals, and they're not wearing clothing, and they have long, skinny arms and skinny fingers and all that. And so there's like people who have said that they have seen these creatures, these aliens. They all kind of describe almost exactly the same kind of creature. So here, though, is an interesting theory, at least that I've heard about that, assuming they're seeing something that really is there and not imagining something in their brains, which is also possible. But let's say they are seeing something real, there's these creatures. Here's what I heard as a theory, and I think it's really possible that these creatures are not biological. They're actually robots. They're like basically, because in other words, the actual aliens, they really do live hundreds of millions of light years away. And they have the technology for these crafts, but it's more feasible for them to have these basically androids or robots that are humanoid in appearance. They have very large heads because they've got big brains, big computers in their heads. They don't have genitals because they're not biological. They don't wear clothing because, again, they're not really any kind of living thing. They're just sort of bipedal robots. And they're sent on a mission. They do whatever they're going to do, and then they come back with whatever they're doing. So I just heard that as a theory recently, and I thought, that makes more sense to me than that they really are actually like aliens from another planet.
I think that's plausible, but one of the things in the Roswell incident, there is a mortician who helped recover some of the bodies that came out of the alleged craft that crashed at Roswell.
Assuming that it's real.
Well, I mean, and again, it's hearsay.
Right.
It's someone's account.
Right.
But allegedly the bodies were organic.
That's what they said. Yeah.
So those of us who,
but what if those biological? Sorry, Katie. But I mean, so maybe we would look at it and identify it as biological. But like we can grow organs in, with our technology, we can grow biological.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, in other words, they could sort of grow not using metal, but it could still be something where it's not them. Like the actual aliens don't look like
purely
that.
Human.
Right? They
a cyborg.
They created a life form for a specific function and purpose, but it isn't themselves. So I still think it could be biological and still not be the actual aliens.
There's more than one alien group, so every possibility is.
That's true.
On the table here.
That's
so
right.
Those of us who do read sci-fi, not Matt, do we have a favorite book or movie that we? That informs you? What's yours, Keith?
Movie. I love the movie that came out a few years ago called Arrival because it's all about communicating. I love that. And then there's a book by a guy named Stanislaw Lem, and the book is called Solaris. The movie is great as well by Tarkovsky, but it's on a similar theme, which is the idea that if we ever met a truly alien life form, it would be impossible for us to actually develop any kind of a language that we could communicate with them. And I think that's very fascinating, and I think that's very likely. We can't even communicate with dolphins or whales. These are also intelligent mammals on our own planet. We cannot communicate with them at all. I don't think we could communicate with a completely, truly alien life form that we've met completely in a different context. So anyway, I love that concept. I love Arrival, which is kind of on that theme, and the book Solaris is also great.
Nice. I'll recommend Mary Doria Russell's The Sparrow. That's wonderful, and it's very profound book. But the first humans to go to another planet are Jesuits. And so they bring their very complex and thoughtful Jesuit theology to encounter this alien world, and it's a just really wonderful book. So
sounds like a horror story.
Smallpox.
No, not at all. Not those kind of Jesuits. These are the thoughtful, learned, in school for like 15 years kind of Jesuits who have scientists among them.
Okay.
All right. So before we transition, for those keeping score at home, where are we at on the score?
All right,
Keith.
Well,
Yes.
Hang on for a second. I got to throw something in real quick before you get to that movie.
Oh yeah.
2010.
Oh yeah.
2010.
I haven't seen
the movie 2010. That's my absolute favorite. And then when it comes to books, Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford Simek. I highly recommend it.
Interesting.
Okay, we'll make sure we get these out too with the episode.
Matt, what are your recommendations for movies, science fiction movies and books?
None. No, I'm kidding. I do like Arrival. Arrival was very fascinating.
Yeah.
I love the storytelling. I thought the concept was really well thought out and probably much more likely than any of the over the top Hollywood blow 'em up apocalyptic movies.
Yeah.
All right, so I need the official count for aliens. So alien conspiracy. Keith.
All right, if you're going to say specifically aliens, like from another planet visiting this planet, I'm probably not. But again, the UFOs, the craft that we were seeing and experiencing and tracking on radar or whatever, absolutely, those are real. I just kind of lean on it being, it's us.
Okay, so you do believe that there's a conspiracy then that's being.
I think there's a conspiracy, yes, that aliens are created to create a conspiracy to obscure the fact that we have this.
Okay,
technology.
a twist on the conspiracy. So yeah, and I'm pretty much like no, I think we're just experience. You know, I think if aliens have visited, I think we're experiencing them. I'm not convinced there's a cover up, but I'm open to it, but not convinced. And then Derek, what about you?
I believe that not only are aliens real, but I believe that they live among us.
Do you believe there's a conspiracy to cover them up?
You know what? Whether it's a conspiracy or not, you know, there's a case to be made for that. But I think that that if they are sophisticated enough to cover light years of travel, hiding among humanity is no mean trick.
So the conspiracy is from the aliens, not from our governments.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
We're too stupid.
I'm going to mark you down as a no, but with
an asterisk.
Matt?
I'm pretty certain that other life forms exist in the giant universe. I am very agnostic on whether they're here and whether the government has covered it up. I would not be surprised. However, even as credible as Lazar can be, I can't put a belief on something based purely on anecdotes when it comes to this. So I would, I guess, be a no, though it would not be a hill I would die on.
Okay, so Matt's the most agnostic among us. I'm the most disbelieving in conspiracy theories, I think. Or Derek and I are kind of neck and neck. And Keith, you're kind of wholesale.
Yeah,
Keith is down the rabbit trail all the way.
Maybe that should be my next podcast. I want to go solo and do a conspiracy theory podcast.
There you go. You and Eddie Bravo can get down on that.
Oh, let's do it.
But, yeah, I'll say with the exception of HARP, though, none of these are really hills I would die on because I think they're fun to explore.
Flat Earth, come on.
Well, flat Earth. Sorry, I forgot about flat Earth. I managed to.
I will die on that flat hill.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And just to bring that back full circle with the moon, I thought, what would flat earthers think about the moon landing? They believe that the moon is a projection. I don't know what it's a projection of, but it's just a projection. So I think they would be in on the conspiracy theory that was a
the moon doesn't even exist.
It doesn't even exist.
Who changes the light bulb on the projector? Like, what if it goes out?
Unclear.
Everybody knows the moon was created by Ralph Cramden, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means, but that's going to somehow transition us to the end. We're going to keep going. Don't worry.
Moon, Alice.
We're going to keep going on this Patreon stuff. However, I want to tell everyone that we have a website. Go check it out. heretichappyhour.com. We've got a store. We've got all of our new episodes on there. We've even got a drinking game. Just tread lightly. Don't overdo it.
And also come and join our Heresy After Hours group. It's free. It's for everyone. It's a membership group for anyone who listens to the podcast. And you can also join in on the polls to see which of us are going to believe which conspiracy theories before you listen to the episode. And we have a conspiracy theory, obviously, to get Matt bumped up in those ratings. So come join us and do that. And then if you are a member of our Patreon group, we have a really awesome Patreon Facebook group that's exclusive only for the patrons of the podcast. And we talk about all sorts of things. We'd love to interact with you. We do Facebook Live. So we'd love to see you in there too.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Patreon, by the way, this is where you get all the bonus extra goodies. I mean, we record extra footage, extra content, extra interviews. We are now even starting a new thing now. We've added some new tiers. We've rearranged some of our tiers. And so there's a $2 level that gets you into the Heretic Happy Hour Facebook group. We have a $10 level where you also get PDFs of our books. $25 level, we are recording now weekly Zoom calls. Each of us, the four of us, are taking turns recording just bonus stuff that we didn't get to cover, our thoughts about these different topics. And we've already started doing that, by the way, and it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, and there's even a $100 level if you are like really rich and you really love us and we really love you. But thank you all for supporting us, all of you that support us on Patreon. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
And if you like what you've heard today or you like the other podcasts that we've done, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a good 5-star rating. And remember that the Heretic Happy Hour uses advanced alien technology by which we're able to track what your rating is, whether you subscribe and whether you tell your friends. And if you don't, you might get a visit from an alien who will do an anal probe.
Hey now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no threats here. Come on, be nice.
No threats. Yes. Be nice,
Okay.
please.
Well, I mean, it depends on who it is.
Alien looks like Sasquatch.
One man's threat is another man's treat.
That's a perk.
Bonus.